I've just got back this week from my very first Royal Caribbean cruise on Independence of the Seas, sailing out of Southampton. In this video, I'll take you through embarkation day, step by step, what the key package is really like on day one, and my first honest impressions of the ship. I've cruised regularly with P&O cruises, Marella and Princess cruises, and I've also travelled to more than 70 countries. But my last cruise was on P&O's Arcadia, which is a much smaller, adults-only ship. So stepping on board Independence was a very different experience. To make it even more special, I brought my sister along for her very first cruise, so you'll see everything through both of our eyes. We stayed overnight in Southampton, because with the key, you get early embarkation. And on a short cruise, I wanted to make the most of every hour on board. We arrived at the City Cruise Terminal just after 10 o'clock. Royal Caribbean use ABP parking, and it works a bit differently to what I'm used to with CPS on P&O. Instead of driving up and dropping your keys, you park your car in a car park opposite the terminal and keep your keys with you. Your luggage is taken from your car by van, and the next time you see it is outside your cabin. It's a really easy process and only about a 5-minute walk to the terminal. That's when you get your first proper view of Independence of the Seas towering above, with the water slides twisting over the pool deck and those bright yellow tender boats along the side. She really does have the wow factor. I'd booked an 11:30 boarding slot, but my pass said I could actually board from 11. Because we had the key, we headed into a separate check-in area, and after a quick process, we were shown to a dedicated seating area just for key guests. In reality, we were on board by 10:30, a full hour earlier than my original slot. That extra time on day one really makes a difference. Stepping onto the ship felt quite different compared with my previous experiences on Marella, Princess, or P&O, where you usually walk straight into the atrium. On Independence of the Seas, the process was a little more chaotic. You're directed around the outside promenade on Deck 4 and then told to report to your muster station, but without much clear signage. We ended up wandering for a while before we found it. One thing Royal Caribbean do differently, though, is the muster drill itself. Instead of the traditional safety drill, where everyone stands outside in life jackets, it's now an e-muster. You just check in at your muster station, watch the safety video on the app, and that's it. It's quick, simple, and means you get more time to enjoy your first day on board. Once that was done, we could properly take in the Royal Promenade. I've never sailed on a ship with an inside promenade before, and even though it was still early in the day, there was already a real buzz on board. For my sister, who was brand new to cruising, it honestly felt like stepping into a floating city. Because the sun was out, we headed straight up to the pool deck and had our first drink at the main pool bar. I'd booked the deluxe drinks package, which I'll cover in more detail in an upcoming video on whether it's worth the money. One of the real perks of the key is the special embarkation day lunch. Instead of joining the crowds in the Windjammer buffet restaurant, you're invited to a sit-down lunch in the main dining room with a menu based on Chops Grill, Royal Caribbean Steakhouse, which you can see on screen now. The service was calm, the food was superb, and it honestly felt like such a special way to start the cruise. I'll still show you a few shots of the Windjammer as well, because it was absolutely heaving. Every table seemed full. Queues were forming around the food stations, and it had that chaotic feel you always get on embarkation day. If you don't have the key, just be prepared that the Windjammer will be at its busiest on day one. Our cabin was ready quite quickly, so we went straight there to drop our things off. I'd booked an inside cabin right at the aft of the ship on Deck 9. For a short cruise, I knew we wouldn't spend much time in the room, so it made sense. First impressions, though. This was the moment I really noticed where Independence of the Seas shows her age. The decor felt dated, compared with newer ships like Avia or Iona, and the layout was a bit tight, especially trying to get around both sides of the bed. I'd asked for it to be set up as a twin, but it was made up as a double. Later that evening, I popped down to reception, and to their credit, they changed it within about half an hour. Our main cases hadn't arrived yet when we first got to the room, but the smaller bags we'd dropped off for the embarkation lunch had already been delivered. After a quick look around the cabin, we decided to head off and explore the ship while we waited for the luggage to arrive. As it was such a sunny afternoon, we headed straight up to the top decks, along with just about everyone else. The ship was full, and with the unexpected hot weather, the pools and bars were packed with people making the most of it. It was the first little hint that this short sailing might feel a bit like a booze cruise. There were lots of families on board as well, which gave the ship a very different atmosphere compared with my last cruise on Arcadia. Even though the ship was sailing full, there were still plenty of sunbeds scattered around on the first day, so there were no signs of those sunbed wars I've experienced previously. And as you walk around the ship, exploring on the first day, that's when you really notice just how much there is to do. Pools, hot tubs, water slides, bars, and of course, the Flowrider surf simulator. Independence of the Seas definitely makes a big first impression. Sailaway from Southampton had a brilliant atmosphere, with a proper party vibe out on deck. Compared with P&O, it felt much livelier and more energetic. Now I'll be showing you much more of the ship in my full tour video, including how to get to the secret helipad, which is one of the best hidden spots on board. But before that, let me give you a sense of what the evenings are really like. Because we'd had such a big lunch with the quay earlier on, we decided to skip the main dining room on Embarkation night and headed to the Windjammer Buffet restaurant instead. I've got to say, I was impressed with the quality of the food. There was plenty of choice. In fact, almost too much at times, and everything we tried was fresh and tasty. It was a nice surprise compared with what I'd expected, and it really showed that you can have a good meal on board without paying extra or committing to set dining times. Later on, we went back to the Royal Promenade, and it really came alive at night. There was live music, bars buzzing with people, and a real sense of how busy the ship felt. The casino was packed. Every bar we passed was busy, and you could tell people were ready to make the most of their first evening at sea. Because this was a shorter sailing, I did wonder if it might feel a bit like a booze cruise. And yes, the bars were lively, and plenty of people were clearly getting value out of the drinks package, but it never tipped into feeling out of control. If you're not a big drinker, there are quieter spaces you can slip away to. Studio B, for example, was a good escape from the noise. In terms of the people on board, it was a real mix. Lots of families, but also big groups traveling together. We saw quite a few celebrating special birthdays, and that really added to the party vibe. I've never had a cruise ship with an ice rink on board before, so we made our way to Studio B for the freeze frame show. Seeing a proper ice show on a cruise ship felt surreal, but really impressive. And the freeze frame ice show was a great show for the first evening on board. Another benefit of the quay is that you get reserved seating in venues like Studio B and the main theatre, which makes a big difference on busy sailings. But even with that perk, I'd still recommend arriving a good half an hour before the show if you want the best seats, because these venues do fill quickly. We also popped into a couple of different bars just to sample the atmosphere, and everywhere had that sense of fun. The Star Lounge was my personal favourite. So what were my first impressions of Independence of the Seas? She's not the newest ship in Royal Caribbean's fleet, and the cabin decor did feel a bit dated, but there's a huge amount going on. From the packed pool decks and buzzing bars, to the family-friendly activities, and even an ice rink, the energy on board is completely different from P&O or Princess. But Embarkation Day is just the beginning. Next Sunday, I'll take you on a complete ship tour of Independence of the Seas, every deck, every venue, and even a couple of hidden spots you'll want to find. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.